And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and earthquakes can cause great devastation in people's lives and wreak havoc on cities, and the earthquake in San Francisco was certainly no different than that. I mean, it was one of the worst natural disasters in history. And yet these things make good games, not because of the disaster, but because of the rebuilding effort afterwards. And this is not the first game to be based on this, but it is based on, hey, there was an earthquake here in San Francisco. You are one of the property developers. Right after this earthquake, you need to get everything built back up. You need to clear the rubble. You need to become landlord of the year. So this game, which is a very small box, but there is quite a bit of game in here, let me show you. As you can see, the game takes up a lot of space, but the game itself is going to be mostly concentrated here. This is kind of the board of sorts. You're going to be placing these cards, which are double-sided in case you're playing with less than 4 players or 2 players, and you're forming a track here. There's going to be a certain number of rounds in the game. The game will end when one player has built all of their buildings in this center area here, or when it reaches the year 1912, in which case, either way, we're going to count up how much players get in points. There are lots of different ways to get points. Players have a money track here. Well, they'll keep track of how much money they get. And the farther you get up on this money track, you might get 1, 2, or 3 points. If you're at 0 at the end of the game, you'll lose points. You also have a reputation track, and various things will move you up and or over. And you can see that there are negative and positive points on this track as you move here. It's also possible to get these cards here, and you can see these cards are worth 2 points. You pay a money here to get 3 points. These cards are worth points the more that you have, and you'll be able to collect these over the course of the game. And then there are public objectives here. Everyone can get these, like the most buildings building green will get points. Everyone can get these. If someone builds all 8 of their houses first, they'll get this card, which is worth 3 points. And then there are personal objectives, and these will score you points for various things that you collect over the course of the game. So each year, players are going to start from whoever's the farthest over to the right. That person's going to go to the next card and pick a spot on that card. They will take the action of that. So for example, here, I'm deciding to take a building from the supply, one of my buildings, and have it so that I can later on put it out here in the middle. If you go here, players are going to be able to take one of these face-up cards or a face-down card here that's going to allow you, these are permits that are going to allow you to build buildings on the board. If they went to this spot here, you can now build something. When you build something, you need to discard a permit or 2 to do it. So you can see there are different building spots on the board. Here, it's a 1 building spot. To go there, I need to play a 1 red card. Let's say, for example, though, I don't have a 1 red card, but I have a green 1 card and a 3 red card. I can say I'm using the red from this card and the 1 from this card to play in that spot. Not only that, if you play 2 cards, if they have a matching symbol on them, then you will take the matching card that gives you points that I've showed earlier. In fact, sometimes you may have the card you need, but you discard 2 cards anyway just to get the matching symbol. Players can also, when they're building a building, pay 3 coins to get rid of a rubble, which will allow them to move up on the reputation track so that they can build in that space too. So players are going to be using this building action to build on these cards. There are other actions that players can take when they go to here that give you a point. Sometimes you build and it has a wild, color when you go there. Sometimes you can clear rubble to get points. Sometimes you just get money. And no matter where you go on the card, you can always take a coin. And in fact, you can always use an action that's not the one here. If I wanted to use this action, for example, I could go here, pay 2 coins to use an action that's a space away, or 4 coins to use one that's 2 spaces away, which is extremely expensive, but you can do it. So players, we're going to pick these based on the action, but also when you pick the order of these, whoever again is the farthest right will go first on the next card. When players have gone around all these cards, they're going to land here, get money, and there's going to be some sort of benefit that's going to happen based on the year. The building costs are also going to go up from year to year to build. It's going to cost more money to do that. And then between years, you might get some bonuses and things like that based on what year it is. That's essentially the whole game. There are cards that will let you take more of these personal objectives, and there's lots of different ways to get points in this game. Have a set of those cards is 10 points. Every one of those cards is worth 2 points. Every house on a green spot is worth 2 points, and so on and so forth. Whoever has most points at the end is the winner. The money track is kind of a pain in the neck. It looks really cool, but moving the different money markers around it all the time, I almost would have rather they just had coins. Now, I get that you can't go over 15, so there's a track for that, but maybe a track with tokens that moved around would have been a little easier. I just found this to be a little unwieldy. The game is also fairly small. You can see this board here and all the different cards with the rubble tokens and stuff. Everything is really small, and there's so much going on in here that on one hand it's like, wow, they managed to fit all this stuff into this tiny box. And on the other hand, I'm like, wow, couldn't they have just made a bigger box so that I could have easily set this up? Because it's a pretty big game. This is the kind of game where I wouldn't have minded a board. Yes, the cards are here and they're random, but I wouldn't have minded putting them on different spots. Now, this is a somewhat minor quibble, and I do know that the price point is down with the game being this small, but it feels like a bigger game, and I almost wish that they had put that effort into it. In one way, this game is a point salad game, which means there's many ways to get points collecting those cards that I showed you. There's tons of different objective cards, and depending on the objective card, okay, I want to get houses that are not next to other houses, or I want to get houses that are next to other houses, or I want to have the most in green, or, and I want to have the most in green, and I also want to be in a corner next to 2 other people. There's various ways to get points, and that's going to determine how you play. But that's not the only thing that determines how you play. That track, which I find extremely fascinating. That track which goes around, and it's a random track. You go through this track and you are going from spot to spot, and it's this really intriguing idea of, hey, I'm moving to here, which action do I want? But that's also combined with, which action do I want on the next card? Because do I want to go first next time? Now, you could keep going first all the time, but then your actions won't be best. And they deliberately put the better actions at the end of each of the cards. But it's really a tough thing because you're sitting there going, I don't know. In fact, on the 4-player cards, there's even a spot you can go to where you get no benefit, but at least you go second the next time around. Well, how often are you going to want to do that? Well, guess what? Sometimes you do. The putting the buildings on the city and clearing the rubble and getting points for that, I don't really get the theming of some of that. Although clearing the rubble, increasing your reputation, or doing other things to move that reputation, that's kind of interesting. But the whole thing that's fascinating to me about the game is simply moving around that track. The game on the box says 45 minutes. That's kind of not true, I think. It's closer to an hour and 15, hour and 30 minutes. And you can say, well, once you get really good at it, you'll play fast. No, I don't think so. I think once you get good at it, you're going to take more time and be thoughtful about your turns. The game will end, like I said, with 8 buildings being built, or in 1912. Those 2 things almost will happen often around the same time. You're always going to feel like you don't have enough stuff. I need to get more buildings from the supply. I need to get more building permits. I need to get more money. I need more, and I'm having a hard time putting things out. But it does feel satisfying as you start seeing your objectives becoming met, and it's pretty neat to see just how much game they did fit inside this box. This is a game that's going to fly under a lot of people's radars. 1906 San Francisco. I think it would have been maybe cooler had they given it some sort of flashy title. As it is, it just looks, it's a date and a name of a city. But there's some really clever moves in here, some really cool ideas, and it's one I think you should check out. Dice Tower Judgment approved.